Welcome back at 8:43. LA County District Attorney George Gascón has a lot on his plate these days, from the fentanyl crisis to his recent memo about weighing the impact of filing charges on a person's immigration status.
And he is here now to talk about both those things and a whole lot more. We really appreciate your time coming into the studio this morning. And first of all, let's get right to it, because the fentanyl crisis is something we are seeing every day in our communities, and it's the #1 killer of people between the ages of 18 and 45. Right. What is the plan here to really stop this crisis?
Yeah, you know, we have obviously been looking at the national, the national scene, and we have seen different policies around the country. And, this is really a health crisis first. And so we've spent a lot of time working with the health department, Dr. Ferrer, Dr. Tsai. We brought in our law enforcement partners. We're bringing also other components to the table, community-based organizations. Schools are really important. We know that the best way that we can address this epidemic is really through three major components. One is education, right? We have to educate our community. Parents have to be educated. Kids have to be educated. We need to prevent where we can, and that's really where the health department also plays a major role. And then in the law enforcement end, we have to prosecute people that are, that are dispersing these drugs in major quantities. So it's an all hands on deck. Police plays a major role in the education and prevention side also, because police officers are on the street all the time. They're talking to people, they're participating in community meetings. So we have been able to, get county chiefs of police and LAPD, and now we hope to get the sheriff department on board as well to help us work in all these three angles. School districts are a major component of this effort. And, the health department really is the driver here. We want to make sure that, they're the ones that understand the science. They're the ones that are telling us where the problem is happening, how the problem is happening. So, it's going to be a process of getting our entire community to work together in order to abate the problem.
And I understand that this is an aggregate effort, that it takes a lot of agencies and a lot of different people to try to solve this problem, including the parents of these kids who are dying. But what do you say to these families who have been hurt by these poisonings, these fentanyl poisonings, by people who prey on their kids and family members, when you've disbanded your victims unit? And some of these people feel like it's, you're being soft on crime in that way.
I'm really not sure. I don't know whether that idea that we disbanded the victims unit.
Well, you can clarify for us.
Actually, yeah, we have enlarged our victims unit. We actually restructured the victims unit. We have brought more people in. We put a clinical sociologist, psychologist to head the unit.
Why do you think that impression is out there?
I don't know, because, the fact that you're saying that we disbanded the unit creates a tremendous amount of concern for me.
Yeah. Well, and that's the impression that people have. That's the perception. But why?
This is the first time I hear that. I've never heard that the unit has been disbanded. So I'm actually shocked when you made that comment. So I'm so glad that you're giving me an opportunity to discuss that, because actually we brought in more people. We're additionally working with the Board of Supervisors to enlarge the unit. We work with the U.S. Justice Department. We just recently did an audit to come up with best practices about the work. We're doing tremendous amount of trauma-informed work within the unit. So the unit is actually larger, more robust. We created a community advisory board of victims of crime that was done actually in the first month that I was in office.
So how have you helped these families, though? We've heard about these families who are suffering, these teenagers at Bernstein High School just recently, and what have you done for these families?
Yeah, so the first thing that we do under California law, district attorneys manage the victims' compensation process. So the first thing that we do is we get in contact with the families through our prosecutors. We provide trauma-informed care, so people that need, assistance with psychological help. In some cases, people may need assistance with other intervention with the family. So all that work goes on in the background at the same time that we're looking at the case and determining how the case is going to be prosecuted.
I think these victim family members really want justice in this case. So what can you do on that end? I understand the whole outreach and caring for the trauma these families are feeling, but in the end, your role in terms of finding justice for these victims, what's being done on that end?
Prosecution, right? So, for instance, we recently filed on a individuals involved in trafficking. There was an arrest that was made out in Compton. You know, so this particular case, this individual was involved in large quantities of, you know, the transfer of not only fentanyl but other drugs. He is being prosecuted. You know, these cases each case is a case on its own, right? We have to look at the facts, we have to look at the evidence, and then we prosecute the cases accordingly. But I want to go back to the comment that was made earlier, because, you know, there's a tremendous amount of misinformation, right? And folks like you really play a major role in providing accurate information to our community. So the fact that you even mentioned that the unit was disbanded is tremendously troubling to me, because all it would have taken is a phone call to our office. We can have our victim service director come here and talk to you. You want to know about prosecutions, we'll be more than glad to tell you about the cases.
Well, your own op-ed recently in the LA Daily News said that you're really only going after the mid and high level drug dealers, right, when it comes to the fentanyl issue, but it's really the guys on the street selling to the kids. And,
well,
you know, families, I don't think, are going to appreciate the fact that there are still those low-level dealers out there really impacting their communities and their kids. So I think they really want to hear what is going to be done to get this off the streets.
Yeah, so, I mean, first of all, we have to understand that this is a national problem, right? We don't live in a vacuum. We happen to be a transfer point for a lot of these drugs. It's other counties surrounding us, right? We have to make sure that also we do not go back to the mistakes of the 80s and 90s, where we were putting drug addicts in jails and prisons and only creating more problems, right? So the way that we're doing the work is we're following the science. We're using law enforcement and our prosecutorial arm where it's most effective. We have to make sure that we're not taking 14 and 15-year-old kids and criminalizing them without really thinking through the consequences of that process. So my op-ed piece was very clear about we have to avoid the mistakes of the past.
Right, maybe not the addicts, but the dealers. You know, if they get prosecuted, get sent to jail for a couple of days or a minimal sentence and then released, I don't think that's really going to comfort a lot of these family members.
Let me ask you something, because I'm not sure what parts of my op-ed piece you're discussing, because I was very thoughtful about laying out education, prevention, and enforcement, right? And we have to understand that this is a public health crisis. We play a role on the prosecution side, on the enforcement side, but we cannot overlook the fact that this is a public health crisis. First of all, right, we would never put people that have cancer in jail to cure their cancer. We put people that had substance dependence and mental health issues in jails and prisons for the last 30 years. And that's, you know, the evidence of the failures are on the street. We can walk outside of your studio and we see it around every place in our community. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We need to learn from the mistakes. We need to move on. But above all, you know, one of the things that we really need to have is we need to have accurate conversations. Now, we can disagree as to the policies and the procedures, but we have to start from a place of accuracy. And to say, you disbanded your victim services unit, which is completely inaccurate and so easy to verify, is very problematic. And I need you guys to help us on this, right? We don't have to agree on everything, but we have to start from a place of truth, and then we can talk about how that can be solved. And the disagreements are good. This is what a democracy is about. It's about bringing all the different people to the table, respecting one another, and working together.
Can we talk very briefly about the new policy that says immigration status should be considered when prosecuting someone with a crime? As you put it, avoid adverse immigration consequences. Can you explain what you mean specifically by that?
Of course. And the policy really has 3 pillars. But before I go into that, I'd like to begin by saying, you know, LA County is home to one of the largest immigrant populations in the world. And we know that in order for justice and public safety to be effective, we have to first of all have access, right? And secondly, people have to believe that the system is going to be fair to them and that equal justice is going to prevail. What this policy is really has three components. Number one is we want to make sure that victims of crime understand that their immigration status is not going to be used in any way against them, that they're going to have access, that they are going to be protected, that we're going to avail ourselves of the federal protection laws they have, such as U visas, T visas, and other tools that are there to protect the victims of crime.
What about the people committing the crimes?
Let me get there. I said there are three pillars, right? The second pillar is witnesses, right? Witnesses have to feel comfortable coming forward, right? Public safety depends on that level of trust where people are going to come to the police, are going to come to the prosecutors, they're going to be availing themselves to the system as a whole. And then the third piece is dealing with the accused. And the Supreme Court has said multiple times, in the Padilla case, the Supreme Court made it very clear that the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution actually indicates that immigration consequences must be taken into account when a prosecutor is looking at a case. And then in the Armstrong case, the Supreme Court said entertaining immigration consequences does not violate the equal protection of the law for citizens. So what are we talking about? We're talking about when, let's say that a person gets arrested for a misdemeanor, driving under the influence, very low level of alcohol. The person went to a friend's house, had a couple of beers. He is impaired under the law. He gets arrested. Most of us, under those conditions, with no prior history of that, will get a citation. We may be put on probation. The case will be diverted. That's what happens. In the case of somebody here that is an immigrant, the outcome of a case, of a conviction or a plea agreement for driving under the influence, even though it was this very low-level offense, which almost every family can point to someone or a neighbor that has been involved in that, can lead to deportation. That can lead to a family losing a father or a mother. So the Supreme Court has said you, as a prosecutor, must take into account that there are similar outcomes. For instance, under our law, you can say reckless driving. You have the same outcomes in terms of your DMV impact.
I understand you're talking about these low-level crimes. How about high-level?
This is only about low-level crimes. Yeah.
All right, we appreciate your explanation. We have so many things to obviously talk to you about, and we appreciate your time. Unfortunately, we are out of time this morning, but we welcome you back anytime.
And thank you for clarifying about the victims unit.
And thank you so much. And, you know, I would love for you guys to come to the office sometime, spend a little time learning some of the things that we're doing.
All right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We'll be right back.